Arsenal 0, Newcastle 2 in the first leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final. And I have to say, Arsenal have now got to go to St James's Park and turn around a 2-goal deficit. I just can't see Arsenal doing that, especially without Saka and the way that in open play, they're just not looking like scoring. I have to say that first half was a very, very impressive performance from Newcastle United. De Bradford made some excellent saves. It was not an easy game, but I think Eddie Howe got his game plan spot on. In today's video, I'm going to start by talking about Newcastle. I then want to talk about why I think Eddie Howe got his game plan spot on, why I think they deserve praise, and then I will talk about Arsenal, Declan Rice in particular, Miles Lewis-Skelly. I will talk about the second half of the video, but I want to talk about Newcastle. And the reason I want to touch upon talking about Newcastle first is because all I'm seeing online is every pundit online and mainstream media just talking about Arsenal, saying Arsenal are unlucky, this and that. And at the end of the day, I think Newcastle deserves some praise because yes, Newcastle went to a 5-5-0 and they parked the bus the last 30 minutes. But I think Eddie Howe got his game plan spot on. I thought Newcastle worked really hard. And while I think if Arsenal had Isak and Gordon in attack instead of Martinelli and Jesus, and Newcastle had Martinelli and Jesus, Arsenal would have probably won the game because Arsenal create the chances, but they don't have the quality in attack. Newcastle got it spot on. They went 2-0 up, and then they parked the bus because Eddie Howe managed the game well. So this is what I said. I said, I'm seeing Arsenal fans claiming they're unlucky. I thought, no, Newcastle away from home got it spot on. At the beginning of the season, Arsenal were title favourites with City, and Newcastle, had a season where they didn't get in Europe. You're going away to the Emirates where Arsenal are really good. Newcastle's game plan isn't going to be to dominate the game and have loads of chances. It's going to be to take advantage of opportunities, hit Arsenal on the counter and defend well. And that's what Newcastle did. Newcastle had a good first half. De Bradford made some good saves. Yes, I think Arsenal should have scored. Havertz should have scored. And I don't think the loss is particularly on Arteta. I think it's on the lack of quality in Arsenal attack. But for me, I thought Newcastle had some good attacking moments. They went 2-0 up. And in the last 30 minutes, Eddie Howe made some brave subs. And I think Eddie Howe got his sub spot on because he's thinking, if I go to St James's Park 2-0 up, I can win that game. So why did I go all out defensive, put the pressure on the defence, and, rely on my defenders to see out the last 30 minutes, which was a risk, but he was proactive. He made those subs early. And I think that's what you expect him to do. Now, I thought Declan Rice was excellent. He could have had 2-3 assists. I think Arsenal should have scored one of their chances, but they didn't. And Newcastle defended well, and Newcastle made it hard for Arsenal in open play. And I think we have to praise Newcastle because I could say again and again and again, Arsenal need an attacker. Arsenal's attack is lacking without Saka. But I think when you look at the context of the situation, the Newcastle game plan was spot on. Gordon and Isak starting instead of Martinelli and Jesus or Martinelli and Havertz. Yeah, I think Arsenal saw some of their chances because I'm not going to lie to you, Arsenal fans, but Gordon's a lot better than Martinelli and Isak's a lot better than your current strikers. I think Havertz can get goals in him and all of that, but Isak is the most complete striker in the league. And I said this, Arsenal fans, I've seen them praising Arteta for going to the Etihad, parking the bus, getting a draw. And then I'm seeing them online saying, oh, Newcastle played the football, they didn't play us, they just sat back. Well, make up your mind. That's what you did when you went to the Etihad. Make up your mind. I thought Newcastle's approach was spot on. And I think, you know what? Newcastle are in the final. Because I just don't see a team, especially with the form Newcastle in right now, going to St James's Park and winning that game 3-0 or 4-1 to get through. I can't see it happening. And Newcastle didn't have Bruno Guimaraes, so Arsenal could talk about nothing Saka, but they didn't have their captain Bruno Guimaraes, who's been in real fine form. They didn't. He's one of their sole creators. So that's probably another reason why Newcastle were more defensive. They thought, well, we don't have Bruno Guimaraes. He's one of the main creators, but we've got that transition quality. The difference between Arsenal and Newcastle was the quality in transition. Arsenal don't transition. Every single Arsenal player wants balls to feet. They don't transition. So weirdly, I thought Newcastle committed some men forward actually in that first half because they knew they were going to sort of get opportunities in the sense of like they played their defenders high because Arsenal don't like to transition or take advantage of that. They like the ball to feet. And that's something that Arsenal need to address in the transfer window. But I'm going to start by talking about Newcastle, my thoughts on Newcastle. I then want to talk about Eddie Howe. I then want to talk about Arsenal, talk about sort of what I think Arsenal's problems are. We'll talk about Isak. We'll talk about Declan Rice. I want to break down this game, and I don't want this video to be too long, but I don't want to sound like I'm slandering Arsenal. Like, I think Arsenal actually put in a decent performance, but they couldn't score. It's just that I've seen all the mainstream media, I feel like, discrediting Newcastle and saying, oh, Arsenal was so unlucky. Well, you've got to give credit to Newcastle, because if you're going away to the Emirates and you're not a Big Six club, even though Newcastle right now are better than a lot of the Big Six clubs, do you expect them to go and play this most amazing football? No. I thought Newcastle got it spot on. As I said, Howe knows Arsenal can't commit any transition. He committed players forward, which paid off for the first 60 minutes. Newcastle looked dangerous on the break. They had some top moments. They had some good attacking moments. They took advantage of that. Arsenal didn't. That was the difference. The way that Newcastle took advantage of their attacking opportunities and had the better quality was the difference. Jacob Murphy, he's been really good lately. Is it a purple patch? Is he a good player? Because Jacob Murphy has been picking out Isak so many times this season, picking out those balls. You know, he's taking more risks than the Arsenal attack right now, Jacob Murphy. Anyway, I thought Newcastle's defence was excellent. I thought every single Newcastle United player put in a warrior performance. They had no Bruno. It was a full-strength Arsenal side minus Saka. I saw that Arsenal side. I heard it's at the Emirates. Arsenal have a good record at the Emirates. Newcastle could be exhausted. But Newcastle won 2-0. And that is an amazing result for Newcastle United. That is what they came to do. Eddie Howe's game plan was, can he get a win? And sorry, I completely lagged out there, so I do apologise if it went laggy or blurry. But what I mean is, I think Eddie Howe would have taken a draw. I think Eddie Howe would have sent Emirates, would have sent that lineup and taken a draw and said, let's take it back to St James's Park. In fact, I think he could have taken a 2-1 loss and backed Newcastle at St James's Park. It would probably be in the game, do what you can, and take back something to St James's Park that you know you can turn around and take to the final. I think that was Eddie Howe's game plan. And you know what? He's going to be thrilled with 2-0. He'll be thrilled with 2-0. The difference was the quality in attack. Newcastle, but you have to give credit to the Newcastle defence. They put in a monstrous shift. It was a 5-5-0 at the end. The last 30 minutes, Newcastle let Arsenal have the ball. They invited on pressure, which allowed Arsenal to create so many chances in the first 30 minutes. Eddie Howe allowed that. But he trusted his players to just defend that 2-0 lead for their life. And that can be a risk. But Burn, Botman, unbelievable defending. Lewis, Howe, Livramento, the work rate. Even Willock and Joel Linton, their off the ball work and trapping Party and the midfield runners was really good, because other than Declan Rice, that I thought had a phenomenal game, I didn't see Odegaard much. I didn't see much from Arsenal. And I think Eddie Howe got it absolutely spot on. I want to give credit to Murphy. I want to give credit to Bradford, who's apparently crying after the game. Is that his last game? I thought both of those players did very well. Two players that, you know what, the highest rated at Newcastle, but Murphy in particularly lately done unbelievably well. And Bradford had a very, very good game. I thought Newcastle's work rate, the shift they put in. I thought the centre-backs were unbelievable for Newcastle. I think every Newcastle player deserves a 9 or 10 out of 10 to go to the Emirates and put in that shift and that performance. You know, Joel Linton, Willock put in a shift. No Bruno Guimaraes. I think Newcastle should be incredibly proud. And I think Eddie Howe deserves a bit of credit, because he got a lot of stick last season and he had loads of injuries. He didn't get any new seasons in the summer. And Newcastle could win a trophy and get back in Europe, even potentially Champions League, which if you said to a Newcastle fan back in August, when they hadn't signed anyone, when they were fuming, that Eddie Howe was going to get them in Europe and win a trophy, which you haven't won the trophy yet and you're not in the final yet, I think, or get you to another final, I think every Newcastle fan would have been amazed at that. I saw this from Counter Presses and I want to read it out. Eddie Howe's impressed me over the last 6 games. His out-of-possession coaching has always been elite, mainly due to his out-of-possession heavy focused recruitment. Newcastle have the hardest working team in the league. They have the most athletically and physically strong players in the league when it comes to covering ground, work rate and effort. That is so key to Newcastle's recruitment. They've got that spot on. That's exactly what Manchester United needs, so I always refer to that. But you look at the 2-0 win over Newcastle. He said he brought the shape-shifting 4-5-1 to a 5-4-1 to a 5-5-0. The coaching of the distances between the players and between the lines, the fluid man-to-man zonal pressing structure, the defending space, Mourinho-esque. And in a game like that, when you're playing an Arsenal, when you're playing a big side that is the favourites going into that game, you have to kind of do that Mourinho-esque football. You know, he said furthermore, his new iterations allowed Newcastle to control games better. In previous seasons, Howe looked to control games by controlling the threat of the opposition and maximising the transition threat. Eddie Howe, out of all the managers, has always been really good in those big games. You look at 4 games out of 4 against North London sides, Newcastle have won. They took points off City. They took points off Liverpool. Eddie Howe knows how to manage those big games. They thrashed Man United. And as he mentioned here, a simple but pivotal change has been the preferred midfield profile personnel opting for Bruno G, Tonali, Joel into midfield. Howe is going into games aiming to control the ball and subsequently the game state, utilising his competitive profiles to bubble wrap Tonali, who can dictate games because of his understanding of flow and tempo. And he's absolutely right. And I thought this was a really good tweet, so I thought I'd read that out. But I am going to quickly talk about Arsenal and my thoughts on Arsenal, because I feel like I have been bashing Arsenal a little bit, and I don't want that to be the case. I think Arsenal could have won that game if they had better quality in attack. I thought Arteta set Arsenal up quite well, but I just felt that Newcastle were being heavily discredited from mainstream media and Twitter. Because I thought, for me, and I'm going to talk about Isak in a second, I do want to get into detail about Isak, but I'm going to quickly talk about Arsenal. The biggest difference was the difference in attack. You swap Martinelli and Jesus for Isak and Gordon, and that's not going to happen. But now, yeah, and I think Arsenal win that game. Maybe they do. But Newcastle put in a professional performance, and Arsenal could not break them down. They didn't even score from their set pieces where they looked really threatening. Declan Rice created some opportunities. Havertz should have scored, but you did not break them down. And this is a problem at Arsenal. Without Saka, it's getting worse. Ranieri could have put in those crosses. You need another attacker, and you need to get one in January, because you can still catch Liverpool if Liverpool drop points, and I think they just inevitably will drop some points. They've got Forest next. But you will not catch Liverpool if you don't bring in an attacker. Nobody's catching Liverpool. I don't think they will. I don't think anyone's going to catch Liverpool. But if Arsenal want to, they have to bring in an attacker, because the difference in Liverpool's attack, Newcastle attack, and Arsenal's attack, you can't win the league, because you need an attacker when Saka was fit. You need one now when he's injured. Havertz playing right wing, I think, says it all. There's no transition threat to Arsenal. There's no one looking to take risks. There's a lack of creativity, and you needed a bit of it when Saka was fit, because Saka can't do it all. You need someone that's a transition threat. You need someone that can go from inside to out. You need someone that can carry the ball. You need someone that wants to take risks. You need two players. But if you can get one of them in January, go for it. I know your dream is Isak and you looked at Sesko, and maybe that's who you go for. But Newcastle weren't going to sell Isak. You see that Isak performance. Newcastle won 150 million for Isak. They were, Gyökeres is maybe more realistic. I mean, you got to bring in an attacker. Now, I don't think it's Arteta's fault. I think Arteta set Arsenal up well. I think Arsenal, if they had that quality of attack, could have won the game. But then you look at it and say, why didn't Arteta go for a striker? Why did he want another Calafiore when he's playing Myers Lewis Skelly now, when he could have brought in a striker? Maybe he was going to get Sesko, couldn't get Sesko, decided to wait till next year. Maybe that's what it was. But yeah, I did think also, it says Rice, I meant to put Saliba there. I did think also that Arsenal were a bit more passive in the defensive moments. I thought Isak did well to find space, Gordon did well to find space. And Arsenal, who I've praised for their defensive movement and their ability out possession, I thought were quite passive. Ben Mattinson said this: last season we knew we were, this is in regards to Arsenal, we were lacking the X factor in the final third, yet we signed no one to address it. January isn't looking likely either. It's holding us back when we've got many fundamentals of a top team. When Saka was missing, it's more evident because he's the only one. Really, and then he said before that, really lacking any threat going forward, just pointing out the obvious would have been atrocious if we didn't attempt to at least address this in January. For today's game, hopefully Jesus comes off the bench. Still, not much happened. Arsenal need attacking quality. It doesn't take a genius to say that. They lacked the X factor, and they needed it in the summer. They didn't get it. Now that Saka's not here, it's become a more notable problem. Maybe they go for Nico Williams, who is on too high wages and a little bit overrated, but profile-wise, transition threat, direct, can dribble, can play on both wings is probably what they need. Who knows? Because I think a lot of the Arsenal transfer news is BS. But let's talk about Isak. 50 goals for Newcastle United in all comps since his debut in August 2022. Only Haaland and Salah have more, so that's great company to be in. He is a monster. But this is my note on Isak / some rough other notes. Isak continues to find and explore space, inventing new ways to create opportunities. Isak is a guy where, we at Man United, we're frustrated because we're like, Højlund doesn't get service, but also Højlund needs to do more of his movement to create service. Isak's the kind of guy where he wasn't actually getting service for a little bit at the beginning of the season with Newcastle, and Newcastle's attack was sort of lacking. Was it the Crystal Palace game? He had you won your first 3 or 4 games, or you did well in your first 3 or 4 games. You then had a 5-6 game blip where you just weren't doing much in attack, and Isak wasn't getting service. And then since the Liverpool 3-3, Newcastle have been great. But Isak's very good at trying to make something for himself and trying to create something for himself, even if he's not getting that service. Even if Newcastle are going to get less opportunities today against Arsenal than they would in a game against Leicester, for example. And the way that he's always finding space, exploiting space, when he has the ball, he might be in a position where you don't think he's going to do anything, but all of a sudden he gets past his man. He's got a bit of space to play a good pass or to play a good shot. He is a danger. His all-round game is better than Haaland. Doesn't take a genius to say that. He is a danger. He can shoot, he can link up, he can win the aerial duels, he can run the channels, he can drop deep, he can score screamers like he did versus Liverpool, like hitting the ball 100 miles an hour. He can score tap-ons like he did versus Tottenham. His movement, his understanding, his ability to drop deep, to be in the box, everything you want. And Arsenal's defence, which is really strong, struggled against him. I thought Saliba dealt with him well in the first half, but then Isak was finding himself space, and when he was receiving the ball, the Arsenal defence was too passive on him, and he was creating chances or getting off that shot that led to the golden goal. He took on Gabriel and Saliba. He was moving with them. He was taking them out of position. He had the ball. He had the ball under pressure, and he was getting the defenders isolated and going and beating them with a dribble, taking them on 1v1 because he has something different to his game. He can create space. He doesn't wait for the duels like Havertz. Havertz was passive today. He let the ball, I don't know, was he scared of the ball for opportunity? Isak, he likes the open space. He likes to get at this ball. He likes to attack the ball. He was the difference. His quality was the difference. But I will give a shout out to Declan Rice. And I have to say, Martin Odegaard's really disappointed me lately. I think he's really dropped off lately. He needs to be a little bit more aggressive. But I thought Declan Rice was really good for Arsenal. I thought he covered a lot of ground. I thought he was winning the ball back well. I thought he was doing well in the duels. I think Lewis Skelly had some good moments. And I thought Declan Rice put in a winning-worthy performance and does not deserve to lose that game. Anyway, Arsenal fans and Newcastle fans, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. Bye.